All right. Well, we're going to get started. Maybe you've noticed this, that certain people are just naturally content. Maybe you noticed this where like certain people, it's like, wow, you're just naturally content. And then the more you think about it, you're like, oh, I know why you're so content. It's because you have a boat. Or it's like, maybe you've noticed this where sometimes some people that are really content, they can sometimes be a little annoying. Like they just say, I'm just grateful for the breath in my lungs. These are like the same people that have what I call a resting thankful face. Well, the rest of us have a resting slightly irritated face. These are people that sometimes will quote, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. And the rest of us are kind of thinking, can Christ give me strength so I don't lose it on the slow driver in the fast lane? That's how it kind of is, if we're honest. Sometimes it's hard to be content. And contentment doesn't come naturally, and gratitude doesn't either. They're actually both learned, which is good news for us. Before we get to our passage, I kind of want to set the context for you. Paul, he's not hanging out in a cozy Airbnb with the passage we're going to be looking at today. He's in prison. This is not what he wanted. He wanted to be in Rome. He wanted to be preaching to government officials. He wanted to be talking to people of influence. And instead, he's in a prison cell, probably chained to a guard. This is the furthest thing that he wanted in his life at this point. And maybe you're here today and you can relate. This is not what he wanted. So he's not like in this like great situation. I mean, just imagine trying to sleep, chained to a guard. You roll over at 2 a.m. and the guard's staring at you. You good? I mean, this is not good for him, right? This is not what he wanted. And yet in this letter, Paul writes about joy. It's all over the book of Philippians. In fact, if you can count it, the word joy is in there 16 times. Paul's in a really tough spot, and yet it's from this perspective that he talks about joy. Not complaints, not bitterness, joy. In chapter 1, he basically says, I wanted to preach to government officials, but now I've got a whole new audience, the prison guards. They have nowhere else to go. They have to listen to me. And he doesn't say, and in spite of this, I have joy. He says, no, because of this, I have joy. Paul learned to reframe what was happening. He didn't just look at his circumstances, he looked through them. And what he saw was God was still working. Paul says, I've learned to be content. So this isn't theory for Paul. This is something that he learned the hard way with chains, through disappointment, and through having the right perspective. A lot of life is having the right perspective. In fact, the way of gratitude is about perspective. It's not pretending that everything's great. It's learning to see things differently. Paul could have looked at his chains and he could have saw failure. He could have saw, God, you haven't been good to me. God, where are you? God, do you love me? But instead, he looked through his chains and he saw purpose. Gratitude doesn't change your circumstances. It changes how you see your circumstances. And that shift, that perspective gives you the peace in situations that would normally steal your joy. Because when you see God's hand in it, it allows you to have joy in spite of what's going on. So we're going to look now at Philippians chapter 4, starting in verse 11. And Paul says, I have learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. So I've read Philippians chapter 4 plenty of times in my life, but it wasn't until I slowed down this week to look at what Paul is saying here that something really stood out to me. Paul's saying, I've learned to be content, which it's safe to assume this didn't come easy for him. This wasn't something that he probably felt content with at first, and he learned it. So gratitude is something that you can learn. Turn to someone next to you and say, you can learn this. Recent studies on the human brain are starting to show us that your brain has the ability to rewire itself. That your brain actually has the ability to change the way it normally thinks. Scientists call this neuroplasticity. It's just a fancy way of saying that people used to think your thoughts in your brain had one way to think, and that was the only way your brain was going to work. Well, recent studies show your brain actually has the ability to rewire its thoughts. So for a lot of us, we tend to have a certain way that we think, and your thought patterns will keep going that direction. But research is showing that you can retrain your brain to think differently. Your brain literally changes based upon what you think about most. Every thought that you create creates a pathway. It's like a mental trail through the snow. So the more you think a certain thought, the more that thought becomes normal and almost automatic for your brain. It's just how the brain works. It's fascinating. You need to think of your brain like Google Maps. Okay, when you put in a destination in Google Maps, it will auto-fill that route for you the next time you go, depending upon the route that you go. And your brain is the same way. Your brain, if you tend to think critically, your brain goes, oh, do you want to think that way all the time? We have plenty of routes we could take you, plenty of frustrating routes we could take you every single day if you want. Or you could tell yourself, you know what? I want to start to think differently. And it's like your brain will go, oh, have you considered joy? It's actually really close. It's 0.2 miles away. You make a right on perspective and then a left on gratitude, and you'll find joy. Your brain is quite remarkable. What this science is showing is that you can build a new pathway. You can build a new route. Every time you choose gratitude over complaining, you are building a new neural pathway in your brain. Every time you choose trust over fear, you are building a new route for your thoughts to go in. Every time you choose faith over frustration, again, you're building this new pathway for your thoughts to go in. You are training your mind to move in a new direction. That's what Paul meant when he said, I have learned to be content. He didn't wake up one day and just had perfect peace. It doesn't work that way. He trained his mind with the help of the Holy Spirit to see God's hand even in the difficulty. So when we talk about the way of gratitude, we're not just talking about being thankful, we're talking about renewing our minds. And we're learning this from an expert. The Apostle Paul knew what it was like to renew his mind. This is why he says in Romans chapter 12, and probably many of you know this, Romans chapter 12, verse 2, don't be conformed any longer by the pattern of this world. Instead, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. We are learning from an expert and what it takes to renew your mind. We're letting God reshape the way we think so that gratitude isn't just something we think about this week, but it could be something you live with every day of your life. So Paul goes on to say, I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned. There he goes again, using that word. This probably didn't come easy for him. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. Basically, Paul says contentment is about perspective. It's not about circumstances. Many of us have probably had moments where we felt pretty content. And then we see a friend or someone we know get the promotion or the house or the vacation. And we go, Lord, I'm content, just not that content, right? Paul's history is fascinating. Paul knew what it was like to have a lot. As a former Pharisee, he was probably very well off. But now that he's committed his life to spreading the gospel, and now that he's committed his life to going all over the Mediterranean Sea, telling people about Jesus, trying to reach the Gentiles, now Paul's probably had a long season of being in need. So he knows what it's like to have plenty and what it's like to have needs. And it's in this context that he says contentment is about perspective, not circumstances. Your ability to be content is about your perspective and not your circumstances. These are what I call scarcity glasses. And some of you are thinking, those aren't glasses, those are goggles. Well, all right? These are scarcity goggles or glasses. And what happens is when you put these on in life, it impacts how you see everything. Like literally everything. You'll start to kind of go, I don't have enough time. Or I don't have enough money. Or I'm not appreciated enough. Or my boss doesn't really encourage me enough. Or my kids don't listen enough. Or my spouse. I'll stop right there because I want you to have a great Thanksgiving and not a tense car ride home. But if you're not careful, the scarcity glasses will impact not only what you see and how you talk to yourself, but it'll impact how you interact with other people. You probably know someone in your life right now that seems like they wear these glasses all the time. You know who I'm talking about. They're called EGRs. EGRs, extra grace required. And these are the kind of people where you are telling them you're excited about something. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this vacation we're going on. We're so excited. And they're like, oh, but the flights right now, they're just so expensive. Or you get a promotion or a raise, and you're like, I'm so excited about this. Yeah, but the taxes, oh my gosh, it's just so high. You see, you have a choice. People, we all have a choice on looking at things with a scarcity mindset, or we have the choice to look at things with a gratitude mindset. And when you put these glasses on, boy, it makes you say things that are really weird, like, God, thank you for this traffic because I didn't want to get there on time anyway. That's when you really know God's working, okay? But gratitude glasses, they're very different. I mean, scarcity glasses will cause you to focus on what you are lacking. But gratitude glasses, well, this changes the way you look at things. Because scarcity would say, God, you haven't done enough. And gratitude glasses go, God has done more for me than I deserve. Scarcity glasses go, God, how are you working? How are you moving? But gratitude glasses say, God is shaping me. God is forming me through this. You see, you have a choice every single day on the perspective that you will look at your life with. Every day, you get to choose. Am I going to look at this with a scarcity mindset or with a gratitude mindset? Because the lens that you use often determines how you live your life. Scarcity focuses on what I lack. Gratitude focuses on what I've been given. And you have a choice every day with the perspective that you bring to it. You can't always change your circumstances, but you can absolutely change your perspective. Paul was sitting in prison. Nothing was going the way he wanted it to be going. And yet he learned to take off the scarcity glasses and to basically say, you know what? God's still at work. He's still at work. I've got new people I can reach, and because of that, I can rejoice. That is the way of gratitude. It's learning to see your life through the right lens. Because whatever lens you choose determines what you see. The way of gratitude starts each day saying, God, thank you for what I do have. And then Paul goes on to say, and I can do all this through him who gives me strength. This is not a superpower verse. This is not I can do anything I dream of. I can live the dream. No, this is a survival verse. This is you can get through any difficult season in your life through Christ who strengthens you. This is not like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be the best. You have to remember, Paul's not writing this from the winner's podium. He's writing this from prison. And so for some of us here today, this verse, what we're seeing from Paul here, that he can get his strength through Christ, maybe this is the verse that is your verse right now. I can get through any difficult season through Christ who strengthens me. What Paul is showing us here is that your contentment, it can come from your circumstances or it can come from Jesus. If your joy comes from your circumstances, it will rise and fall with the season and the situations that you live in. It will rise and fall all the time. Or your contentment can come from Jesus. And therefore you will have rock steady contentment because Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So Paul, his contentment wasn't based on his circumstances, because if it was, he'd have every reason to not have joy. But it came from Jesus. So even in his chains, he could have joy. If Paul could find gratitude in prison, you can find gratitude in your pressure, because the same Jesus who strengthened him strengthens you. But you have to train for this. You have to literally train for it. You have to be intentional. It doesn't come naturally. It's not like I'm just going to wake up today and choose to be grateful and all of a sudden joy just spills over. It doesn't really work that way. You have to, it's not just decide to be content. You have to train for it. Gratitude, it's like a muscle. It's like a muscle that if you don't use it, it gets weak. You don't have six-pack gratitude and never exercise it. You've got to be intentional with it. So every time you thank God, even for the small things, like for your coffee in the morning or for the fact that you took a warm shower or that you have a full refrigerator, you have a car that works, every time you do that, every time you thank God for just the great night you had laughing with a friend or with your spouse, every time you do that, you are getting an extra rep in. You are retraining your brain to focus on joy. Every time you choose worship instead of worry, you're doing another rep. You're making that muscle stronger. Every time you choose gratitude over grumbling, you're rewiring your brain. You are literally helping your brain have new neuro pathways. Every time you choose to see God's hand instead of the hardship, you are helping your head, you're helping your thoughts to move in the right direction. That's what Paul is talking about. He learned this contentment. Gratitude, it's not instant. It's intentional. So how do you train for this? Well, Paul's going to actually give us a clue here in a moment, but the way you train for it, it's called the replacement principle. You have to trade an anxious thought for a grateful thought. You have to replace it. Anxious thoughts just don't go away just because you prayed about it. God can certainly work that way, but more often than not, he seems to work through the repeated practice of taking an anxious thought and replacing it with a grateful thought. That's how you rewire your brain, that's how you retrain your heart, and that is the way of gratitude. Your brain every day will have 500 uninvited thoughts every single day. And most of those thoughts will last 14 seconds. That is 2 hours of your day with uninvited, interruptible thoughts that are you're not good enough. Why can't you be like that mom on Instagram? You're not a good provider. If they knew the real you, they would run. You should be over this by now. You call yourself a Christian? You shouldn't struggle with that. And if you're not careful, all of a sudden it's like you can go live like years and years where it's like you have this like terrible like show that will never get off the air in your brain. It's kind of like having Simon Cowell live in your brain, and he's constantly critiquing your singing and your life choices. You can't like tell your brain to stop thinking. Your brain doesn't work that way. Your brain is working while you sleep. That's why a lot of us have these like kind of crazy dreams. You can't tell your brain not to think. It's like trying to tell the Raiders to stop losing. It just doesn't happen. Sorry, Tim. All right, you can't tell your brain not to think, but you can replace those thoughts. You can give your brain new ways of thinking. Let me give you some examples. When you're tempted to complain, just pause, take a deep breath, and thank God for one thing. When you start comparing, remember something God has done for you. When you start worrying, remind yourself, Christ is my strength. That's where you take like a complaining thought and you replace it with a grateful one. And that's how you rewire your brain. One thought at a time. One like new thought, one moment where you remind yourself, hey, this is where God's worked in my life. And when you do that over time, you start to develop a brain that works for you and not against you. But you have to think about this. In fact, that's where Paul is going to help us here next with this replacement principle. You have to think about it. You have a choice. You have a choice every day with how you think. Nobody forces you to think a certain way. And Paul, he's going to give us a big tip here in verse 8. He says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. We all know how the algorithm works on social media. For every little bit of content that you engage with, it'll just keep feeding you that content. And so as you're scrolling, if you engage with certain content like political meltdowns or my life is over and your life is over now too, the algorithm will keep feeding you that content. And your brain is the same way. Your brain will actually go, oh, do you like this content? Oh, we'll keep feeding you this if you like this. Or you could kind of take a different approach. And that's what the Apostle Paul is encouraging. He's encouraging you, hey, you can actually fix your algorithm. You need to think about what is true. Noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, excellent, and praiseworthy. If you think about these things, it's almost as if God is giving you his like recommended playlist for you. Hey, this is what you want your algorithm to be about. It's these things. It's almost as if the Holy Spirit was working through what Paul wrote over 2,000 years ago, and now science is backing it up. If you think about what's good and true and noble, what's excellent and praiseworthy, your mind will start to go that direction. But here's the problem. The problem for a lot of us is our mind typically doesn't go to Philippians chapter 4, verse 8 type of thinking. Our brain, if we're being honest, if we're fully honest and transparent, a lot of times our brain goes to stinking thinking. You know stinking thinking? It's like you have a normal, everyday kind of like occurrence or everyday kind of like thing that happens, and your brain will run it right off the cliff. Like you text a friend and they don't text you back. And your brain is going to really bad places. Your thoughts can go there really fast. Like they hate me. I'm probably getting kicked out of the friend group. I should probably like sell all my possessions, sell my house and move to Montana, right? It happens real fast, right? We go to bad places. Or you get an email from your boss. Hey, swing by my office before you go. I want to talk to you about something. And you are already updating your resume, already putting on LinkedIn that you're open for work. I mean, it goes really fast. Or you get a text from your spouse, we need to talk. And you go, this is it. This is when I die. I knew it was going to happen, right? Go to like a really bad place. That's what can happen. And so what Paul is saying here is, hey, Your brain, you don't have to fill it with the stink. It doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to take like worst case scenarios. You don't have to like make it catastrophic. He's like, you can think differently. And if we're honest, there's a lot of us here, we're like, you know what? I kind of have like Olympic level stinking thinking. Like, I think I've gotten a gold medal at that in points in my life. And some of us were honest. It's like, you know what? If stinking thinking was a sport, you would have been sponsored by Gatorade like decades ago, right? It's easy to go there. And Paul is saying, you don't have to let the stinking thinking run your life. You can choose what you think about. You can replace the stink with something better. And so what Paul is basically saying here in Philippians chapter 4 is, stop letting the garbage take space in your mind. Fill it with what is true and noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, excellent, and praiseworthy. Because here's the truth. Stinking thinking leads to stinking living, but grateful thinking leads to joyful living. Here's how it works. Your thoughts shape your perspective, and your perspective shapes your attitude. And your attitude shapes how you go about your day, and your days can shape how you go about your life. And so what Paul is talking about here, this matters. This replacement principle, it really matters because it can make a big impact. Well, let's be real. Let's think about this replacement principle as it applies to you. If Jesus was going to be your own personal life coach, and if you thought about the things that steal your joy away from you, and if you knew Jesus was going to say, hey, what would this look like for you? How would he coach you in that conversation? What would he say to you? For some of us, maybe we're going through a difficult season, and it feels like we don't have what it takes to get through it. What would he say to you? Or maybe you've had like a really negative self-talk in your brain for a long time. What would he say to you? I want you to think about it from this perspective. Instead of thinking blank, I'm going to choose to think blank. How would Jesus talk you through that conversation? If he was going to say to you, hey, I want to get coffee with you, I want to talk about this part of your life, what do you think he would say to you? It's simple, but it's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy because you get to choose how you're going to go about this. But it's going to take intentionality. It's going to take you basically training. It's this daily choosing, this repeated practice of taking an anxious thought and replacing it with a grateful thought. It's a beautiful thing because when you start practicing this more and more, your brain actually starts to go and move in this direction more and more. That's what the research shows. The more that you can take the anxious thought and replace it with a grateful one, your brain will automatically start moving that direction. And the more you see God at work in the little things, the more this joy will spill over into the big things. That is the way of gratitude. I want to give some practical next steps that will really help with this, where you can start your training today. And so here's the first one. Walking in the way of gratitude, just the first one is start a daily gratitude exercise. Just kind of do this thing where you go, you know what, whether it's in the morning or night, I'm going to try to pick 3 things that I'm grateful for. And if you pick one of those things being a person, I would just encourage you to tell that person. Just tell them, hey, I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for how God is working and moving in my life through our relationship. And I'm just so grateful because God actually loves me through you. Just try to start doing this daily gratitude exercise. And the second one is pause before you complain. Take a deep breath. If you need to, maybe count to 10. And just decide, hey, you know what? God's been really good to me. And I want to focus on that instead. Pause before you complain, when you pause and you think about what God has done in your life that's been good for you, you are literally helping yourself create those new neuro pathways. The next one, share your gratitude. This is an easy week where, for a lot of us, we just naturally do that. We're gonna sit around a table, have a lot of turkey, a lot of gravy, a lot of mashed potatoes, and it's not uncommon for a lot of families to just share something that they're grateful for. But it doesn't have to just be this week. You could do this the rest of the year. You could do this all into next year. You could just share something you're grateful for. And if you share with someone, this is how it typically works. It kind of becomes contagious. It just kind of tends to spread. You could share your gratitude. And the last one, reflect on Paul's example. Paul is a great example for us that his circumstances didn't create his joy. His joy wasn't based upon what was going on in his life because he was focusing on Jesus. And if Jesus could strengthen him to get through that season, he can absolutely strengthen you. Heavenly Father, we're grateful for this example that Paul lived out for us. That there is a way to think about whatever season of life that we're in. We can choose to look at it with a scarcity lens, or we can choose to look at it with a gratitude lens. God, help us to be the kind of people that are thoughtful about how we think, that we're learning from Paul that we actually can change the way we think. We can learn to be content. God, that's our hope, that's our prayer, that we be the kind of people that think about your word, but then we meditate on it, we think about it, we talk about it with safe people, and we let it transform us, that we could experience the way of gratitude. God, we're grateful that you're a good God, that you love us, that you're for us, that you even equip us to change the way we think, that we could live out this gratitude on a daily basis. God, we love you. We're grateful for what you've done for us. We pray this in the good and awesome name of Jesus. And everybody said,